This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. Boring. Boring.
Okay, you got it work. Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome, Lembit Öpik here on Unprecedented TV and Lembit Öpik Live, where we find the facts, kill the spin, and tell it like it is, which is more than can be said for the great Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who, if you're watching this live, has just delivered a budget which broke just about every promise in the book. That book being the Labour Manifesto commitments. It was Rachel Reeves who said that she wasn't coming back for more taxes or more borrowing. She's done both. And having listened to her road crash set of interviews this morning, once again, if you're watching it live, it seems she can't apologise and can't really admit that she's broken those promises. That's good news, of course, because it means that she's saving her party a lot of money and quite a lot of time, because they won't need to write another manifesto, since nobody will believe it anyway, including themselves. More than that, though, we've got a chancellor who clearly doesn't understand her own mission. She said that she was all about growth, as well as lying about taxes. She said she was all about growth. But those who are charged with assessing these things, including the Office for Budget Responsibility, which helped her on her way by actually pre-launching the budget before she'd given it, and she's pretty accident prone, I think, in that sense. Wasn't really directly her fault, but these things do seem to happen to Rachel Reeves. Well, they say that, or they haven't cited this as a growth budget. And other commentators have said, well, actually, there's nothing in this budget which will prompt growth. On top of all this, we have this environmental nightmare agenda of the Labour Party, where they think that they can save carbon dioxide in my view, mistaken belief that that will make our climate better. I personally think that the climate has always changed and always will. But they have enough money for the climate crisis, something which I think is non-existent, as well as incidentally carry on sponsoring the hopeless and lost war in Ukraine, where Volodymyr Zelensky, the clown turned comedy politician, has totally failed to stop the advance of the Russians. So he's got enough money for those things, but not for the basics. But today we're going to focus on this totally confused climate in the that's very Freudian, in the Labour Party, Tory party as well, about the net zero agenda, and whether actually we should be spending any money at all trying to reduce carbon dioxide. And it's a good week to do it, because the annual lecture by the Global Warming Policy Foundation took place with a chap called Lord Glassman. We'll find out who he is in a minute. And I'm going to ask them, the Global Warming Policy Foundation, what they do and what they make of the budget. Who better to talk to than Harry Wilkinson, joining us from the offices in central London, I think. I recognise that corner of your office. Good morning, Harry. How are you doing?
Good morning, Lembit. Very well, thank you.
Let's start by understanding, what is the Global Warming Policy Foundation?
Thank you. We are a non-partisan independent think tank and educational charity looking at climate and energy policy and promoting a more balanced and a rational approach to climate and energy. So, you know, we were founded by Nigel Lawson back in 2009 after he wrote a book called An Appeal to Reason. I'd still recommend that as an excellent introduction to the subject. He could see then, as is the case now, that climate change policies were costing more than any impacts from climate change itself. And since he founded the GWPF along with Dr. Benny Paiser, We've kept on researching and raising awareness of these important issues. People are getting poorer and poorer, and a large reason for that is because their energy prices have been going up, and that's because we've been pursuing decarbonisation at any cost and ignoring the importance of getting bills down and getting reliable energy.
I have to say your logo is very nice. Can we get that up there? Yeah, it's a very nice logo. Even if I didn't know what you did, I'd probably join the group just because I like the logo. Does that make me superficial? Yeah. I remember when I was about, must have been 6 or 7 years old, I made my auntie buy a packet of Ariel soap powders just because I liked the logo on the front. Little did I know this is a portent for the future, because I actually went on to work for the company that made it. Who knew? Incredible. Anyway, leaving my biography aside, Global Warming Policy Foundation therefore wants to introduce, I'm paraphrasing, but introduce common sense and science into the debate. I recall that when Lord Lawson was interviewed by the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC, they were so incensed in the wokerati that he wasn't properly challenged that they changed their entire policies towards covering what I think is a non-existent climate crisis with the idea the science is settled and they didn't have to have balance anymore. That's true, isn't it?
That's right. Nigel had pointed out the global warming pause that we saw between approximately 1997 and about 2012, that global temperatures hadn't actually warmed in that time, something that many climate scientists actually did go on to acknowledge. But because they didn't like to hear that, he was cancelled effectively, one of the early victims of cancel culture, and not allowed to speak about the subject again on the BBC, which was a deep shame because he had so much to contribute to the debate, and he was completely excluded from that.
Yeah, it was tragic. I thought that Nigel Lawson was one of the great big politicians of his time, and when you compare Lord Lawson with Rachel Reeves, there's not a lot of similarity. And that brings us smoothly on to this budget. Does the Global Warming Policy Foundation, I think I know the answer, but I'll ask anyway, have a particular view on the quality of this budget from an environmental perspective?
Well, I think the thing that stood out to me from the budget was the lack of action in a crucial area, which is the North Sea. We still have something that's called the Energy Profits Levy in place. This is an enormous tax on the oil and gas sector, which makes it impossible to operate. It was introduced at a time when, yes, energy prices were very high in the aftermath of when the Ukraine war began, and energy prices shot up. And all sorts of policies were introduced to shelter people from that impact. But since then, prices have returned to normal, and the industry has become, in a very desperate way, we're losing 1,000 jobs a day in the North Sea, according to some sources. So this is a catastrophe that's getting worse every day, and these are high-skilled, unionized. I mean, Labour should be supporting unionized jobs. They're completely ignoring that, and they've built up communities over generations in the North Sea, in the northeast of Scotland in particular. So rather than get rid of that levy, as most countries have now done, pretty much all countries that introduced a super profits levy during that time have now reduced it, apart from the UK. So we're being especially punitive. We're losing all these jobs, and yet still we didn't see that heinous energy profits levy removed. And so those job losses will unfortunately continue.
Can't those jobs be shifted into wind turbines that we hear about all the time? I think these are on land, but they love putting them in the oceans as well.
Well, this is a very unfortunate green delusion. We're told that, these green jobs will replace jobs in the oil and gas sector, that there would be something that was called a just transition. This is a very sinister term, because what we see is there are far fewer jobs in wind and solar energy. Most of those jobs are in manufacturing in China and other countries. We just import these products. Yes, there's a few jobs in maintenance, but they're not as well paid as what people were getting in the North Sea, and there are far fewer of them. So we've been sold a con. These green jobs simply don't exist. They're not materializing, and we're losing vital skills that we're not going to be able to replace.
Somebody who seems to lack vital skills is the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, who infamously told us last year that she would not be coming back for more taxes and more borrowing. Those are her actual words. And she's come back with more taxes and with more borrowing. And when asked in all of these, as I described them earlier, road crash interviews that she's been doing all over the mainstream media, she can't bring herself to admit that she lied. Now, I kind of understand that, but you can't talk yourself out of a problem you've behaved yourself into. And I'm wondering, looking at one of the most prominent aspects of what she said, what you make of the fact that after years and years of telling us we all have to start driving electric vehicles, she then puts this 3p per mile levy on electric vehicles and some sort of a expensive car supplement for electric vehicles raised to £50,000. I'm less interested in that second part than the first. That's Rachel Reeves calling you now on the other phone, trying to stop you from answering. But you can anyway. 3p per mile. This seems to absolutely go. I mean, I knew it would happen. I predicted this would happen 10 years ago, but it has happened. And this seems to go completely against all of this coercion to try to get us to shift to electric vehicles.
Well, I mean, if you're going to have everyone drive EVs, it was always inevitable that, you know, if we want to fund the roads to the same degree, we were going to have to start taxing EVs. It's not fair that, you know, often wealthier electric vehicle drivers are avoiding road tax essentially, while ordinary people are facing it. So I actually welcome an equalization between what EV drivers are paying and what other road users are paying. And you know, but what's concerning is these grants for people to buy electric vehicles, which are disappointing because, you know, when people's finances are under such strain and there are such pressures on the budget, to be paying wealthy people to buy electric vehicles to make them feel better about themselves, you know, should not be a priority of the British government.
I agree with you. It was absolutely inevitable, absolutely unavoidable that electric vehicles would lose their financial incentives. Because if we shifted all 37 million vehicles, something like that in Britain, from petrol and diesel to electric, they have to raise tens of billions of pounds of lost revenue, much of which isn't even spent on the roads, actually, to electric. But since electric has got all kinds of shortcomings, anyway, in my view, if you take the financial benefit away, which clearly has been driving it, largely, I say that largely because a lot of the purchase of electric vehicles has been by corporations who've just picked up the tax incentives to do it. And then they leave their staff stranded far away while they're waiting for their vehicles to recharge. If you take that away, there's very little incentive from this budget to actually shift to electric vehicles.
And we see as well all these extra subsidies to build electric vehicle charging points. I mean, and you can see the level of dislocation from market forces that should be there. We never had the government planning a whole petrol station network when the motor car was rolled out. You know, companies built them to supply a need that was there and to promote their products. And if electric vehicle manufacturers want people to buy electric cars, they should be the ones paying for electric vehicle charging points, especially when, you know, those cars are mostly made in China, and, you know, European car manufacturers, which excelled at making internal combustion engine cars, had the delusion that they could do a similarly good job with EVs. They haven't. They're being totally outcompeted by China. We're losing this industry, which is also facing high energy costs in Europe as well. So we just need, a more common sense approach, and one that actually favours our own interests, which are producing internal combustion engine cars, not EVs.
So we're not really in the game here. It seems to me that this is simply another brick in the wall for British car manufacturing. Why would you produce petrol and diesel cars in a country you can't sell them in?
That's right. I mean, they just ignored the fact that they had a competitive advantage doing this thing, and they had the arrogance, I think, and the lack of ability to challenge governments. What's really tragic to witness in the business world over the past couple of decades is an increasing desire to pursue political correctness and political policies rather than what their consumers actually want. And a business operating as it should be about meeting customers' needs, providing better products that people are demanding. Instead, we're being told as consumers we have to comply with the grand projects of our corporate and political overlords who say, you're driving electric vehicles, you have to get over it. We're going to introduce legislation known as the ZEV mandate to ensure that you have to buy this product. And so everything is being co-opted to a singular agenda. It's reminiscent of the state planning for the Soviet Union. People's choices are being massively restricted. And of course, the catastrophe that we've been seeing in manufacturing was an inevitable consequence from that.
After the break, I want to talk with you about the Global Warming Policy Foundation's annual lecture, which I was honoured to attend. You're watching me, Lembit, Öpik, here on Unprecedented TV, as we're talking about a climate of confusion in the Labour government, where they were telling us all to go electric. Now they're going to start charging you for the privilege of paying per mile for driving that car. How are they going to actually implement that as well? Some serious implications there. Just want to remind you, Claire Dyer will be on at 5 o'clock today. A replay of one of her best shows. Claire Dyer is a stalwart campaigner. She puts the public interest above her own. She takes local issues of national interest. Watch this. That is, I think, a fantastic series, if I say so myself. And it's basically Claire Dyer raising issues which could be affecting your local communities too. All credit to her for that. But for now, you're working, I'm working with Harry Wilkinson here on the programme to talk about various issues relating to the budget and the environment. Just before we talk about the annual lecture, on this pay per mile thing for electric vehicles, how are they going to do it? Electric vehicle owners face new pay per mile tax. What could be the environmental cost? Well, we don't need to go into that too much today. But I think this must mean they're going to track you. I heard something ridiculous on TV saying, oh, well, what we'll do is people will self-declare. All right, I did 5 miles last year. I mean, it doesn't seem to work. Sorry, Harry, you're going to say.
Well, I wonder whether the mileometers in modern vehicles can somehow be electronically connected to government monitoring systems. I'm not really sure, but certainly that would be disturbing if they started tracking people. But I'm not sure we've seen the details yet about exactly how this would be imposed. But personally, I think there is an element of fairness about per mile versus, taxing everybody the same, regardless of how much they drive. Although, this will hurt, people who need to drive more, for example, sort of commercial drivers, much worse. So I think we have to look at the impact of that, and government will have to mitigate, the impacts on people who perhaps for their careers have to drive far longer distances.
We'll be covering this on the station on Full Throttle, which is our transport dedicated channel. I'll just say one more thing though. If it's self-declaration, dream on. I do think it's right electric vehicle owners pay more actually, because their vehicles are heavier and they do more damage to the road like for like than the petrol and diesel equivalents. But fundamentally, I think the whole thing's balmy, because electric vehicles are actually bad for the environment. They tie up Earth's valuable precious metals and batteries, which are almost impossible to recycle. And when there's a fire, you can't put them out. You just have to wait for them to burn out. But okay, moving on from that, I'm indulging myself a little bit. Let's talk about maybe a happier thing. You had your annual lecture. What are those lectures about? What are they for? And then we'll talk about who you had.
So each year, the GWPF holds its annual lecture. We like to invite leading thinkers of the day to talk about energy and climate issues. We've had many esteemed people in the past. We've had Matt Ridley. We've had Tony Abbott, the former Prime Minister of Australia. We've had the excellent climate scientist Judith Curry. We've had many esteemed people give this lecture over the years. This time I think it was important that we heard from a voice from the left. Certainly in British politics now, the parties of the right, Conservatives and Reform, both seem to have woken up to the threat posed by net zero. They are both pledging to remove the Climate Change Act. And there is now a burgeoning discussion on the left as well. We see that coming from the unions, people who are concerned about the job losses in the North Sea in energy-intensive industries. And Lord Glassman was someone from the Blue Labour movement who aligned with socially conservative values, but was a socialist at heart. And so his perspective was unique. It was one that we've not necessarily heard from at an annual lecture before. And we were absolutely delighted to welcome him on Monday evening to give this talk.
I was there, a really fascinating conversationalist as well. I think one of my favorite lines was when he said, the catastrophists say that it's going to be raining everywhere. Everything's going to be flooded. So basically, it's like living in Manchester, but all over the world. So that was a great line. I'm not sure it rains much more in Manchester than in London, but it certainly rains more in Northern Ireland, where I grew up. What was his key message?
His message, I think, was really about energy policy serving the common good of the people, and how divorced that we had come from that by pursuing grand utopian schemes around decarbonisation. It was a common sense speech, albeit delivered with enormous flair, with enormous awareness of the the history of humanity, and how human beings go through these spasms of apocalyptic sort of scaremongering, and he could see through that noise to the actual fundamentals of energy supporting ordinary people's needs, and that their fundamental need for secure, cheap energy. And so, he also emphasized the national security implications of not having those in place. So it was a profound speech, and I think one that everyone should listen to. We'll be releasing it on our website and on YouTube soon. So please do check it out for that and watch it yourself.
love to broadcast it on unprecedented TV. If you let me, we'll talk about that separately. I find it fascinating and quite refreshing. He used a phrase, blue Labour. What does that mean?
So blue Labour is all about, I think, connecting Labour back to its working class roots and the values of the people that it hopes to represent. And I think what Lord Glassman could see happening is those metropolitan values. And actually, albeit, personally, I am strongly in favour of markets and what they can deliver for people. But how Lord Glassman would see it is that the market was tearing the Labour Party, and that the pursuit of free markets and liberal market ideology was tearing the Labour Party away from working class people. That's how he would describe it, I think. And he set up this group, Blue Labour, to challenge those forces within the Labour Party.
I was thinking about it. I know this isn't where it comes from, but like the blue pill in Matrix. I think red pill bad, blue pill good. I think it means you think for yourself. He made a joke about smoking, and sure enough, my team found a picture. Here he is with a cigarette. I don't happen to smoke, but I like his earthiness and the way he responded to so many of the points. He's got an unusual presentation style. It's not razzmatazz. It's not glitzy, but you hang on every word because he's so funny and so prescient and actually, in a sense, quite humble. I think he recognizes his own intellectual capabilities, but in a sense, the way he delivers it is quite humble. He admitted that, well, he claimed that he'd misunderstood what he was being asked to speak to. I won't go through the whole story. You've got to watch it. Very funny. And I found him fascinating. Lord Glassman, though, is still in the minority in the Labour Party's parliamentary party, which seems to be completely red-pilled.
He is not, among not enough people. There's too few people speaking out about this in the Labour Party. We do have to mention, of course, Graham Stringer, who is one of our trustees at the GWPF. He has been a very brave voice in the Labour Party as well, but there simply aren't enough of them. And I would urge Labour MPs, people in the Labour movement, to start speaking up about this. This is your own voters' interests. This is the heartlands of the Labour Party, which have been deindustrialised and are continuing to be deindustrialised because of the high energy prices that we're seeing. Just within the last couple of years, we've seen Grangemouth close, we've seen the Lindsay oil refinery close, we've seen potteries in Stoke close, we've seen the van factory in Luton close. These were
the steel industry
provided well-paid jobs for ordinary people, and those people are the people that Labour was actually founded to represent. So go back to your roots and represent your own people.
Yeah, well, the steel industry as well in Britain, almost gone now. Though if there was a climate emergency, if it really was the case that Britain was ruining and the world was ruining, human race was ruining the planet's climate, then I'd have a different view. We won't go into the science of it now, but I think the underlying problem is that they're fixing a problem that isn't there. That's my opinion. Now,
what's changing that may bring more people into the fold here is the national security element. And this was something that Lord Glassman emphasized. He wanted the MOD to take over management of the grid because he could see the national security implications of that. But in this increasingly dangerous world, we see the war in Ukraine, we see a rising China making threats about Taiwan, all these risks and threats that we can see. It's becoming increasingly clear that for our own national security, if we lose fundamental capacity such as making steel, this will leave us weaker and weaker. And we saw in the COVID pandemic how vulnerable global supply chains can be. So I think that these vulnerabilities are highlighting the importance of secure, reliable energy that supports industrial capacity that underpins the security of the British economy as a whole.
You say that, but hold on a minute. The person who's in charge of our grid may not agree with you. There he is, Ed Miliband. I have the power. This man was in charge of the Labour Party for a while. He's still tipped to be a runner to take over when Starmer has to resign.
Well, he has the intermittent power, unfortunately. It doesn't work. And he doesn't acknowledge this basic point. It's not a complicated point, but it's fundamental to our energy security. And he's pursuing AR7 at the moment. This is his plan to commit to the largest ever renewable energy auction, signing people up for 20 years of sky-high electricity prices. That's Ed Miliband's plan. Everyone, including the big six energy suppliers, can now see that. They spoke to Parliament not so long ago and said, even if wholesale electricity prices fell to zero, our bills would still be going up because of policy costs, those policies being imposed by Ed Miliband. So everyone in the sector can see this now, apart from Red Ed. And
apart from the man in charge of policy. That's not great, is it? The one man who could actually stop this madness is creating it, promoting it. I haven't got an issue with solar panels if people want them. I don't think they're effective. I do have a big issue with wind turbines because they don't do what they're built for, basically. But Ed Miliband wants to bury carbon dioxide, the gas of life. I'm hoping to see Piers Corbyn today. He's one of the great campaigners celebrating carbon dioxide instead of demonizing it. Ed Miliband doesn't understand any of that. But I know we haven't got much. We only got a few minutes left. I want to ask you, before we finish, about COP30, the Conference of the Parties stands for. An incredibly dull title, but a really weird sort of group of people. The BBC, which unquestioningly tells us that there's a climate emergency, is almost moaning about the fact that fossil fuels haven't been mentioned in the final accord of this ridiculous conference, when 50,000 people flew to Brazil where they'd knocked down rainforest to build a road so that they could get around in it. What do you make of this COP30 thing? I think it's drivel myself, but what do you think?
Well, I think this was a fascinating COP, and it could indeed mark a turning point with the whole trajectory of the climate movement and the climate debate. We saw right at the start Bill Gates, someone who's actually promoted many of these multinational agencies promoting the climate scare for many years, but he's been realistic. He's saying that the alarmism is overblown, and crucially, when it comes to humanitarian objectives, that we shouldn't be letting climate concerns stop us from doing vital humanitarian work. Now, that should be a basic point and a fundamental moral point for most people. How can you be allowing anything to be getting in the way of saving some of the most vulnerable people from starvation, disease, malnutrition, lack of water, all those objectives, many of which, it takes energy to solve, and perhaps fossil fuel energy at that, these problems. He was saying, what are we doing if we're letting the climate concerns get in the way of fixing some of the problems? So we have to tackle that alarmism. But then I think also at this COP, we've never seen such a lackluster deal at the end. They've always been somewhat of a ritual. We have this panic. We have these late night negotiations. They pull something out of the hat. It never really commits to anything, but it keeps the whole show on the road. This deal was so weak that it's hard to see that the show is on the road anymore because, as you mentioned, they weren't able to get even fossil fuels in the wording of the draft. This shows how divided countries are becoming over this topic. And, my tentative prediction would be, you know, in the future COPs, you know, these negotiations are going to get even more difficult.
And the state-sponsored channel in Britain and the mainstream are moaning about it as if this is terrible. And as you say, it's an almost embarrassing ritual now. Oh, they went on into the night. That tells me that they're not an efficient organization and they can't do this. Oh, well, we stayed up till 3 to do the deal. It's a bit like student politics.
How brave of them, how lovely that they were, you know, deluding themselves. And you know, the BBC very thinly disguises where their own feelings lie on this subject, by, you know, promoting this with no criticism, no critique, no cynicism as well. You know, let's remember what they're doing here. They're imagining that if they write on a piece of paper that there'll be 80% renewables in 2043, that will happen. Or that will reduce, you know, methane emissions by 40% by 2035, that this will happen. That these meaningless national targets translate to anything in the real world. This is not how the world works. You know, if they want to promote decarbonisation, you know, they should be investing their own money in technologies that can change these things. You know, there's no reason why fossil fuels will stick around forever. They are the cheapest way of generating electricity at the moment. But if other energy technologies come along that can outcompete it on price, people will adopt that without compulsion. It will be much quicker than trying to force people to use expensive, unreliable technologies. So they are getting in the way of their own agenda. They're deluding themselves about their own importance. And they're imagining that they can plan the global economy from the middle of a rainforest in Brazil, having cut down, you know, swathes of trees to get there to build this road. You know, it is utterly delusional, and you know, people need to wake up to that.
To finish where we started, then, Rachel Reeves with her budget didn't talk about the environment much, apart from wanting to tax electric vehicles. You and I both agree that's a good idea. It's essential, in fact, but it also means essentially they had to do it, but they very publicly abandoned the idea of encouraging us all to go electric, because if you drive 10,000 miles a year, that's £300. But if you drive 100,000 miles a year, not so many people do, then that's £3,000, and it feels like more than petrol because you have to pay it separately somehow. Do you think that Britain has abandoned, or the Labour Party has essentially abandoned their green agenda, or not? Because I'm still thinking Ed Miliband's still there.
No, I don't think they have abandoned the green agenda just yet. You know, this does remove some of the incentives for EVs, but there are big incentives still there. There's company car tax exemptions for EVs that still, you know, provide quite a big incentive for some people to buy electric vehicles. There's these massive subsidies for charging points. So there's still a lot of green money going, or taxpayers' money going into these things. And, you know, I do think we need to go further in stripping back some of these expensive public policies, trying to support a technology that we import from abroad and that increases our reliance on China. But, you know, there were some other things in the budget as well. You know, we saw that they want to remove some of what's known as the renewable obligation subsidies. These are legacy renewable energy subsidies that were for projects going up to 2017, wind and solar mainly. And those were 20-year projects where we pay them massive subsidies, about twice the wholesale price of energy we pay as a subsidy. So they're getting 3 times wholesale prices for some of these projects, crazy amounts of money. And they've said that that's going to be funded by taxation partly. That's the domestic portion. You know, businesses still have to pay that on their bills, but domestic customers will have the subsidies, 75% of those subsidies removed, and it will go on to general taxation itself. So, you know, this doesn't actually remove any of the costs. It shifts the burden around. It will be slightly fairer for poorer people not to have to pay as relatively large a portion of these subsidies. So it's very modestly helpful, but it doesn't deal with the underlying costs. It just shifts it around. There's no way we should be paying these subsidies at all. They are outrageously high. They could be switched off tomorrow. It's not like the CFDs, which are for new contracts for difference, for new renewables. Those are legally binding contracts. These are subsidies which the Secretary of State could set to zero tomorrow, saving people huge amounts on their bills, saving businesses as well, but he still refuses to do that. And Claire Coutinho, for example, has said she would remove emissions trading scheme taxes, she would remove renewable obligation overnight. That could be done immediately, and we'd all be paying much lower bills.
Where can people find out more about the Global Warming Policy Foundation?
Well, our website is thegwpf.org. Do go there. You'll find our full library of publications. You'll find videos of our annual lectures and other resources as well. So please do check it out.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. And as I say, the offer's there. If you want us to, very happy to broadcast that lecture. And my brilliant question as well, which, if I say so myself, that is Harry Wilkinson from the Global Warming Policy Foundation. You have your say as well. Very interested to see what your opinions are on this. We've got tons of comments. I'll just go through a few of them. Technocrats are totally insane. They keep poking the bear. I'm going to post some parcels. Thanks, Lembit. Harry, bye, Paul. Later, says Carl. A few more. What about hydrogen? That's where we should be investing. I'll cover that on a different occasion. Nigel Lawson's book was excellent, says Christopher. I just don't believe they haven't cracked over unity, says Colimids. Interesting. Energy from water. Oh, we can't have that, adds Colimids. And yeah, quite a lot of chat about hydrogen there. And from Paul MC, 100% Carl, there's agreed there as well. Do have a look at the chat there. Thank you very much indeed. Lots coming up today on the station. Do please have a look and go to the archive. Please subscribe. Go to Unprecedented TV on YouTube. And it would be absolutely great if you just click that button. It takes you 20 seconds. The more of you subscribe, the more we can do. And also, we're very close to launching the regular feature of Good Morning USA. And if you happen to be in America or anywhere else, you'll see one of our episodes of Good Morning USA going out today. We're still testing the project. It's still in beta mode, if you like, but the content is brilliant with Sarah E.V. Clark from Dallas. I'm Lembit Öpik. This is Unprecedented TV, the home of free speech. Have a good day.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages.